Hello, I'm Hal Lublin.
And I'm Mark Gagliardi.
Since the dawn of humanity, one issue has gone unsettled. With the fate of the world in the balance, we're here to settle once and for all.
Best SNL Musical Guest.
That's right. Don't worry, everyone. We got this.
Podcast should have a theme song. Podcast should not have a theme song. Yes, they should. No, they shouldn't. They sound good. Yeah, but people are just going to skip past it. You know what? You're right. We got this.
Give us the Don Pardo.
Best SNL Musical Guest.
Yeah, there it is. I knew it was coming.
Of course you did.
I knew that if we're going to do an SNL-centric episode, Hal is going to do his Don Pardo.
Yeah, we're going to do a lot of these, I've decided, because it's the 50th
you have
anniversary.
decided.
This is my opportunity. We texted about it extensively. This is the 50th anniversary. This is the fullback who's blocking for me as I run towards the end zone like Saquon Barkley. Mm-hmm. We're going to do as many SNLs as we can before this season ends. And
is that what did we decide on that?
Yeah, you're hearing about it now. We have a very special guest with us to discuss this. Someone who loves both SNL and music a great deal. Ladies and gentlemen, Ken Plume.
Producer Ken Plume.
Oh, hi. Hi.
Hi, buddy.
Hello.
Nice to have you on the show.
I've heard a lot about it. I may be one of the few people who have heard every episode. I've certainly heard more episodes than the two of you.
Yeah, that's surprising. Not that you're the only one that's heard every episode, but that you have, in fact, heard every episode. I guess you do hear them after the fact because you usually have your camera off. I can only assume that you're like, guys, we're going to go for like an hour. You turn your camera off, go play a game, watch TV, have some tea, and then come back later.
Every episode that's been released or unreleased, the only ones I've missed are the ones you've lost.
Wait. I'll put it this way. The number of people who have lost episodes of this show is the same as the number of people who have decided we're going to do 50 SNL episodes.
And they're the same person.
Yay!
I'm doing that Hamilton one finger in the air, but it's off camera here.
Oh, we can't see it.
It's pointing out.
There. It's nice to see you on camera, Ken.
Yeah.
It's nice to see you too.
You got a haircut recently. Your hair looks great.
Thank you. I'm glad
You're
some
welcome.
of it still left.
Yeah. Hey,
you got a good deal of it.
All hanging on by the tips of our fingernails here.
Yeah.
Not me. I'm holding on to all of my very white hair.
It looks great, though. You have like a mane.
Yeah.
People get wigs that look like that. Yeah.
People get wigs that look like this if they're playing the Golden Girls in a school play.
And that's happening a lot. The license just became available to all schools.
Oh. Man, could you imagine if MTI released a Golden Girls Junior school play? Comes with like the whole kit. It's got Sophia's handbag.
Yeah.
Dorothy's shoulder pads.
A cheesecake.
Can you two do Waiting for Godot, but as Dorothy and Rose?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I used to do when we did Big News, which then became Top Story Weekly, which I think no longer exists. I used to play B. Arthur. Whenever we did more than one Golden Girls sketch, and I was always Dorothy. And I would walk in with my hand under my elbow and the other hand up. She would walk in like the grande diva theater she is, and I would just go, "Bah, Rose."
That is a good one syllable impression.
Yeah, that's all I needed. I can't even do cheesecake. I just had to do cake. Speaking of impressions, Saturday Night Live, a show with a lot of impressions, also a show where music has been an integral part of the show since it launched October 11th, 1975, with Janice Ian and Billy Preston. And they've had so many, like at least 1,000, I think, musical guests in the lifetime of the show. And Shelley Godefrin. And this is the first time we have taken a topic from the new Discord. So thank you for everybody who is there participating, still waiting for Mark to sign up. It'll happen at some point.
That's exciting. This is Discord. That's an internet thing.
Yeah.
That's an internet thing. Yeah. Yeah.
I hear they have a Jitterbug app.
Ooh, I can use my big button phone.
You sure can. We'll add one more button to it. So you have phone call.
Wait a minute. Do you think that my big button phone doesn't have like a number pad like a regular phone? You think it really is just like a button that says "we got this" and a button that says "ignore"?
I assumed it was pictures of food.
You know what? It's an all year one of Instagram phone. It's just pictures of food.
I thought it was 10 buttons that say ignore and one button that says answer, but it's on the other side.
It's underneath one of the other buttons. To get to the button that says answer, you have to push a button that says ignore.
Yeah. Or send a voicemail, which is just a wastebasket picture.
Yeah.
Grandpa had a moment earlier that was driving me crazy. My phone, do you know this new thing? I don't know even if it is a new thing or if it's just a thing that when I reinstalled the software, I had left on or turned on.
Please say 5G. Please say 5G.
Tap with 3 fingers to zoom, but it does like an extreme zoom. Do you know this?
I haven't explored it yet. No.
I didn't know this was a thing, but apparently I toggled it on or it was default on. And then I accidentally tapped my phone with 3 fingers and it was an extreme zoomed close up of one corner of my phone. And it was locked. I couldn't figure it out. I tried to shut down the phone by pressing 2 buttons on it. And instead I made an emergency call. The light started strobing and a siren went off. Like I had opened the door of the wrong car and an alarm and all of the everything.
You threw the phone out the window.
Yeah, I threw the phone immediately out. No, it was while I was sitting here right now. This just happened.
Maybe you should get a jitterbug.
I need a jitterbug.
It feels like you should.
Or a landline.
Maybe you need less.
Maybe you need a landline.
I need a landline. You know what I need? I need a landline, but not a cordless landline. I need a landline with that really, really long cord hanging in the kitchen.
Yeah.
With the swivel on it, just in case you want to walk around in circles.
Right.
And a cassette-based answering machine.
Well, now that we figured out when all of us first started watching Saturday Night Live, let's talk musical guests. Ken, you had a good idea of throwing out our contenders that each of us have. And I think we've each come up with 3 to 5 of those. But first, let me ask, what makes a good SNL, or what makes, no, not what good. There have been a lot of good performances. As you said, over 1,000. What makes a great SNL musical performance?
So here's my question on this, though.
Mm-hmm.
Are we going for best musical performance or best musical guest? Because I think those can be 2 different things, and the calculus for those are different.
I agree with you.
Mm-hmm.
I think you don't necessarily have to separate them. So the ask from Shelley was best guest. So it wasn't best performance, but in the people that I've picked, I have a justification for why they may be either important to the lifeblood of the show or important because of the time and moment and culture that they appeared. And sometimes I have one here who only hosted one time. I've actually 2 of my 5 have only hosted once, but both I think were really, really important and had great performances. Others have hosted multiple times, but I have a signature performance.
You say host.
So you're saying host. So that leads me to.
I'm sorry, guests.
Okay.
I mean, guests.
As part of my calculus in looking at this is that musical guest participation in the larger show as a whole. And are they a utility beyond just a 1-off or 2-off in the case of most musical guests in the show?
Or like Bad Bunny, you do both. You come in and you host.
Or they're so good that they trigger, we need to bring them back to host. Or it just happens that the one time they did it, the first off, they were given both duties because they were on such a cultural platform at that point that they decided that was a benefit to the show to start them as a guest and a host.
Yeah.
I do have 2 people on my list who have multiple times done double duty and have multiple times been musical guest.
Okay.
So I have a feeling that there's going to be at least one person that 2 of us pick. I think there could be someone here that all 3 of us pick, but I do think Ken's 100% right. There's the side that I talked about, which is their moment in culture that they appeared and the music that they played or a particular performance that maybe influenced others or just stood out. But also their ability to appear in sketches. I mean, Paul McCartney's never hosted the show, but he has appeared in a series of sketches when he's been on. So that would be something you could factor in if he is on your list. He's not on mine, but he may be on somebody else's.
Spoilers.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm trying not to.
It's interesting because the question was, I guess I had thought of it as being the performance of the musical guest, but the musical guest does have ancillary duties frequently on the show.
Sure.
I was looking at it as what is the function of the musical guest on the show and do they fill that function? Sure. I'm also looking at it specifically as the musical guest, meaning that performance and not just how great that performer is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I'll give you an example. The Replacements are a great band. No, I'm not going to throw any out right now.
Replacements
I'm just going to say, as an example, the Replacements are a great band who had a great performance on SNL. Beyonce is Beyonce. She went on SNL. She was amazing. Of course she was amazing. She's Beyonce. So I'm also looking at it as, is the performer an excellent performer, but also is it an excellent performer who is stepping up to meet a moment, and that moment being performing on SNL as the musical guest.
But the baseline ask and requirement of a musical guest is entertainment. Do they provide entertainment
100%.
on the show?
Yeah.
To that, I would even say that Ashley Simpson, in her own way, did provide entertainment on the show.
Fair.
And she did come back another time without lip syncing, I think. I think she did return.
I think there was a do-over.
Yeah. But what's great is we each have like a slightly different approach. None of them are wrong. And I have a feeling that either the final finalists or the eventual winner is going to encompass a lot of what each of us have discussed. So, Ken, you want to throw out your first pick?
Yes. I'm going to throw out, and this is someone who may be on your list, but I'm going to put it as, this is going to be, I'm sure, a slightly spoiler for you too. Five Timers Club. I think the fact that he was very close with the show right from the second episode in establishing what the show was and what it was capable of, and its mixture of the music and the comedy of that moment in time and that culture in that time, and that he continued to come back over the years in some very, very deep and dramatic moments across the history of the show. So my first one is Paul Simon.
I had him on my list.
Paul Simon's a great choice. Again, I was looking at performances and not multiple guests as multiple timers. I think Paul Simon's a great one. The whole still crazy after all these years in the chicken suit.
Turkey out.
Turkey suit,
sorry.
Thanksgiving.
Yeah, because Thanksgiving. That's right.
Yeah.
But also his performance of Homeward Bound with George Harrison was so
I have on my list, not as in my top 5, but high on the list was the fact that you had a Beatle and half of Simon and Garfunkel. So just incredible harmonists doing Homeward Bound on that
part
show.
of iconic partnerships.
Yeah.
And here they were in that moment. And Paul Simon also had a wonderfully awkward episode with Art Garfunkel as well, with some lovely performances in it, but still incredibly awkward.
And of course, him performing the first episode back after 9/11, where he does the boxer, is a really important. Again, like right on, not only as a host and somebody who appeared, him playing basketball to me and Julio out by the schoolyard, which I think
is Ed Bradley giving him a trophy at the end of the episode.
Yeah. Like so many great moments came out of there, and he is like forever intertwined in the show. He appears on the first episode just promoting that he's going to be on the second episode with Art Garfunkel. So,
which was a huge thing at the time. I mean, that was for putting the show on the map. Getting Simon and Garfunkel back together after years of acrimony was a good way to get people to tune in.
Yeah, that's excellent. Yeah, really great choice. Mark, what's your first one?
I'm gonna go. Since we're gonna start in the old school, I'm going to stay in the old school, and I believe his first appearance was 1976. But this performer appeared 4 times on the show, and knowing that the early mandate of the musical guest for SNL in those first few years was people who aren't on television a lot, introduce the world to some musicians. And what I think is a job of the show now and always has been is for the musical guest to be a break from the comedy, a break, something different, a totally different tone shift, especially in those early years when they were still finding their footing. And plus, I just think he's cool. I like his music. I like his style. I like his aesthetic. I loved him as a snowman in Elf. Leon Redbone, specifically Leon Redbone doing Shine on Harvest Moon. Just in a spotlight, Panama hat, and that drawl he's got just down here, and just finger picking Tin Pan Alley songs to just change the pace. I think that was SNL showing the world someone cool, and someone cool giving SNL a cool break from the comedy.
Yeah, that's a great choice. I love that.
He's my first one.
I'll stick in the first 5 years as well. This act only appeared once, but they appeared at a time when the New York counterculture scene and the genres of music that were coming around started to bubble up towards the surface. And SNL was really instrumental in putting I mean, obviously you have Debbie Harry. That's in 1981, bringing, what is it? The
Plus
Fab Four and one more. Yeah. Fab Four plus one more. Yeah. But it's Devo.
Oh.
No, it's him singing Babalu with his son. No, it's Devo, who appeared in October of 1978. And not only presented this really odd take on punk and just their interesting sort of genre of music that they helped revolutionize, but I contend that their cover of Satisfaction is one of the few covers that is better than the original song. And
you were pushing for this on our cover show or cover song episode.
Imagine you're tuning in. I remember what it was like seeing Nirvana for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
I saw Smells Like Teen Spirit. I saw the video for that on Headbangers Ball, which I would stay up. My friend and I would stay up to watch heavy metal videos because we loved heavy metal. And then on comes Nirvana, and you're watching this group that's like, this is not rock. This is not metal. I've never heard anything like this before. It's insanely good, and it should not be on this show. This doesn't fit into any box. And I think they are one of those acts that showed up and didn't fit into any box and sort of expanded the horizons of the audience. That's what makes them not only important, but just their performances were great. The music is great. And then their presentation is also great. So I have them.
Are they the only ones that did a costume change mid-song?
Yes, while doing real-time stop motion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good on them. Yeah, Devo's a blast. All right, so far, Paul Simon, Leon Redbone, and Devo. Ken, who's you got next? Who's you got next? Is that what I just said?
You did.
Who you got?
It is.
No, I'm working it with who's you
got?
Who's you got? That sounds like a dish you've cooked.
Oh, why? For dinner tonight, we're having who's you got? Holy moly, that roux took a long time to cook. I had to wait for that roux to get chocolate brown for the who's you got.
I love Mark's who's you got whenever he makes it for that family dinner.
Oh, yeah. You're going to enjoy it this time. This time there's extra okra.
Absolutely cannot wait. So I'm going to go a little more modern.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to go with someone who has come back in the most recent season. And I think it's always great on someone who does double duty, who has great comedy chops and can lean into that, and also great musical performances and strong musical performers. So I'm going to go Ariana Grande.
Oh, great.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm going to say that Ariana Grande just narrowly pushed out Miley Cyrus.
Also a great musical guest, great performer. Great.
Talk about meeting the moment. Miley Cyrus with her Pink Floyd cover during the first COVID episode, or the COVID episode at home.
Wish you were here.
Yeah. Brilliant. But let's talk about Ariana. Look, Wicked is the biggest thing in the world. It's not controversial to say Ariana is very good at her job and always has been. She was hilarious on Victorious.
Yeah. But I think it's that, again, utility player of dropping her in any scene, doing that espresso thing, singing off key. Not an easy thing to do when you're such a talented performer.
Have you seen her do impressions before, vocal impressions?
On SNL, on her first SNL.
Yeah.
I guess she did do it on
Spotify.
SNL.
It was originally Pandora with Bruno Mars. That was the first one that Seth Meyers wrote. And then when she hosted, I think it might have been Spotify, or they kept it Pandora for that one as well. But yes, it's incredible.
That is a crazy skill to have.
She's so good. If you've ever heard, there are clips of her speaking in her actual voice, because the voice that you hear where she's talking like this is not her speaking voice.
No. You hear her exactly like Michael Jackson's real voice.
Yeah, she's like, "Hey, how's it going? It's me, Michael Jackson. I'm actually Ariana Grande. Don't tell Pete Davidson."
What?
Yeah, great choice. Obviously, great musical. If you separate important culturally, great in sketches, and also just great performances that she's getting.
My best friend's house, just as a combination of music and comedy and puppetry. Shout out to Kelsey Brady, our friend, who did one of the puppeteer.
Couch,
Kelsey do the puppet for that?
I think she was the couch. She was in the couch.
No kidding. She's great.
She is.
All right, who's up?
You are.
Oh, okay. All right, I'm going to get back in the old school machine again. I'm going to once again make it about a specific performance. And it's not even just her performance, but it's the way that the whole thing was shot. This was, again, 1976. I'm sticking old school. I'll bring my newer stuff in later.
Sure.
but it begins with that profile shot. And I think there's just like a guitar or something in the background, but almost a cappella. Patti Smith's very stark profile. Jesus died for somebody's sins, but not mine. The song begins so simply and then becomes this. It's like 7 minutes long. I think it's something crazy. Her version of Gloria on there. Patti Smith doing Gloria on Saturday Night Live is not only one of the best SNL musical performances I've ever seen, that's one of the rawest rock performances I have ever seen. She is pure Patti Smith, pure New York City. Like, if SNL is a love letter to New York, which it's been for 50 years, you need only watch the opening to see that. She was a distinctly downtown New York performer with such a like raw, gritty style, and she brought every bit of it to the show.
And parodied on SNL as well.
Yeah, got parodied like her.
Gilda, as Candy Slice.
Gilda, what was the name that she gave her?
Candy Slice.
Candy Slice, yes. With the armpit hair. And like did the whole thing. But man, look, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. And oh man, is Patti Smith amazing.
Yeah.
Great.
It's a great choice. I'll do my other one-off, an act that probably could have gone on the show 25 years before they did. But in November of 2016, when the sane world was sort of reeling and rattling, Dave Chappelle was the host. And he was the right guy at that time for that show. But the musical guest, A Tribe Called Quest, who had just lost Phife Dawg and put out this incredible final album, came on to perform. And their work is rooted in social commentary. And they performed 2 songs. They did We the People and The Space Program. The Space Program is actually the track that opens the album. They had Busta Rhymes and Consequences with them. And it's just like at a time when there were a lot of people who didn't know what to do and were fretting, they opened by saying, like, everybody stand up, put your fist in the air. We are all together before they even started the song. Just their importance to come and meet that moment in their very first time on the show and their only time on the show. I don't think they'll ever be back. They're not going to be ever back together the way they were because they were doing it, you know, to a certain extent to honor Phife Dawg. It's just an all-time performance and like exactly what was needed at that time. They came in and met the moment in a very big moment in a very big way.
Yeah. Well, that goes back to what we were talking about earlier, like an SNL musical guest, a great performance meets a moment.
Yeah.
And we've had a couple of those on this list so far.
Yeah. Ken?
Well, speaking of a guest that meets the moment, that is also a crossover, that was the guest host and the musical guest, but as 2 different aspects of themselves.
Oh, no.
I know who it's going to be.
It's not Garth Brooks.
It's not Garth Brooks.
And Chris Gaines.
I thought it was Garth Brooks and Chris Gaines for a second.
But it is Donald Glover and Childish Gambino.
Yeah.
Finally getting his moment and his shot on SNL proper, but also the cultural moment of where the country was at that moment and where SNL was at that moment, and coming in with a much needed injection of both comedy and social commentary.
Yeah, which is the show at its best.
Was he the musical guest in another episode as well as Childish Gambino? Did he do that multiple times? Or was it just the one?
Just that one.
Okay, just the one. Yeah, great choice.
Right.
I dabbled with him. He's not one of my, I am going to bring one of my alternates out at some point. Mark?
Yeah. Again, I'm sticking with great performances. And I'm going with royalty himself. Appeared in 1981. He was actually he and his band they had 2 musical guests that episode, but in one of the 2 musical slots, Prince came on and played Party Up.
Yeah.
And Prince doing Party Up on SNL. If you've never seen early Prince, like, this is some epic, I see why this guy became the biggest star in the world. Where, you know, like late Prince, he didn't have to do much. He'd like move one pinky and be like, and then everybody would go nuts because he was standing on the shoulders of the version of Prince that was James Brown's more excited, peppier little brother frontman.
Yeah, he was a bit of a scruff dandy at that point.
Oh, man, he's
quite evolved
so
into
fun.
Full Prince.
Yeah, his Party Up on there. Yeah, it's mostly Prince, but also a little bit of Mick Jagger.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? A little bit of that Mick Jagger swagger. Yeah, it's just it's another incredible performance.
It's almost like Prince and the Pauper, and this is like the Pauper version that becomes the Prince that we all knew from that point after.
I mean, yeah, it's pre-Purple Rain. It's before megastar Prince.
And
it's just cool Minneapolis rocker
no concern
Prince.
For microphone.
What do you mean?
Well, he threw the microphone down at the end.
Oh yeah, that's true. He did throw the microphone.
That slam of that microphone hitting the floor.
And timed it perfectly for when the mic was going to hit the stage, as opposed to, because a lot of musicians, a lot of like your instinct would be like, I'm going to hit it on the beat. Like, I forget what it is. Like, we're not going to fight your war or whatever the final line is. We're not going to fight your war. Boom. And then that was the hit. But he goes, we're not going to fight your like,
no, he hit it so it hit the floor on the beat.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
That is an expert musician. That's a guy who cares more about the music.
That guy knows physics.
He does. He knows physics. And another great, like a lot of the great ones, some people go a little far, but a lot of the great ones end with some sort of statement or begin with some sort of statement.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to pull in one of my alternates.
Okay.
For the next one. And I'm going to choose the one that I think both of them will come up at some point. I think Ken might have both of them on his list.
Are they also people who also hosted? Because so far Ken is only doing musical guests who also were hosts.
Now you remember you have to treat Garth Brooks and Chris Gaines as one person.
I swear, Ken, if you break those two out, I hear I'm saying it. Those two,
the music, the soul patch.
He fooled you.
In December of 1977, Elvis Costello was brought on the show. He was supposed to play two songs, Watching the Detectives and Less Than Zero. In the middle of Less Than Zero, he stops and says, I'm sorry. There's just no reason for us to do this song. And then impromptu goes into Radio. And the popular culture world melts down. And the story goes that he was banned from the show, which is not true. He was on it multiple times between then and his return for, I think it was it wasn't the 15th. It was the 20th that he performed. Was it the 20th or 25th?
No.
It was the 25th with the Beastie Boys.
Was that the 25th?
That was the 25th. Yeah, when the Beastie Boys.
The 25th.
It wasn't the 20th. The 20th was canceled.
That's right. Yeah, the 25th when the Beastie Boys are playing Sabotage, and then they stop, and he comes out and stops, and they play Radio together. Great moment, but also just a guy with an incredible catalog, and having that moment, that like danger moment. There's what better way to prove it's live than stopping your song to go into another one.
Because the record label told him to play the song that he originally started, which he thought the American audience is going to understand this thing. This is about what's happening in Britain right now.
That is one of my favorite things about that story is the reason that he stopped playing the song that he was playing isn't because like they said he couldn't do radio. So that was a decoy and that he really did it. No, he just didn't want to play that only because he's like, look, man, it's political satire that's not going to work here.
Yeah.
And he even says, he's like, that's not going to work here.
This unreleased
there's no reason to do this song.
This not yet released radio is what he goes into. But also, I do like the caveat at the after party of Bill Murray walking up to him and go, don't let Lauren try and change the story afterwards that he was on board with this because he was at home base flicking you off the whole time.
Yeah. It's great. It's so great. And the thing I love about this performance, too, is when he does that, you can see that he knows it's a little bit naughty to do that. Mm-hmm. And all of them, the whole band, they sort of collectively take a breath together when they start Radio, because it's a little wonky for like a measure at the beginning. But then they all have this look on their faces of like, all right, it's a brand new song. It's not tested. This had better be good. Like, so they all gave a great performance, kind of like they had to.
And a fast performance, kind of like they thought they'd be carted off.
Yeah,
right?
They definitely are pushing the tempo on it. It's just such a great performance. I love it so much. And Elvis Costello is great. And he's become this figure of lore in SNL history that it doesn't check out when you actually see him come back multiple times.
Yeah.
But it's such a great story, and he'll be talking about it, and Lauren will be talking about it, and anybody who is still there and is still alive will be talking about it until they're gone.
Yeah.
So, and that story will still live on afterwards for as long as the show at this point is sort of hewn into rock. Like, it's probably the biggest pop culture institution in American history. So that story will live on for as long as civilization lives on at large, because that show is so impactful.
Yeah.
Should we take a break? Ken, you're the producer. Should we take a break right now?
This is usually when you would point us in the direction of taking a break.
Right?
I think we should take a break.
All right. Well, let's take a break. We've each got 2 more picks to go, and then we're going to start eliminating people to come away with the best SNL musical guest of all time. Stick around. We'll be right back. Big E is a former WWE champion.
He spent 10 years at the top, sharing the ring with John Cena and Roman Reigns.
So, what's next?
When I retire, I'm going to move to the desert. I'm going to delete all my socials. I'm going to disappear. Y'all will never hear from me again. I'm going to sit on the couch, chill, and live my life.
From the legendary tag team The New Day.
It's Big E on Tights and Fights.
I feel like I need to listen to a few episodes that you guys have, because this was really enjoyable. So
Oh, no.
Thank you so much for your time. Oh yes. Oh, yes.
Available on Maximum Fun or wherever you get your podcasts.
The following are real reenactments of pretend emergency calls.
911. My husband! It's my husband! Calm down, please. What about your husband? He loads the dishwasher wrong. Please help! Please help me! Where are you now, ma'am? At the kitchen table. I was with my dad. He mispronounced his words intentionally.
There are plenty of podcasts on the hunt for justice, but only one podcast has the courage to take on the silly crimes. Judge John Hodgman, the only true crime podcast that won't leave you feeling sad and bad and scared for once. Only on MaximumFun.org.
But my other 2, I'm fairly confident, are not going to be picked by anybody else, but we'll see.
Well, I'm going to have to do an alternate.
Again, Chris Gaines, Garth Brooks, one person.
Get the hell out of here. And we're back. Ken's
you're up
pulling
next.
shenanigans during the break. Don't you dare, Ken Plume.
I'm not pulling. I'm trying to prevent shenanigans.
All right, who you got?
This is my penultimate, and I'm going to go with the show embracing the intersection between comedy and music within its own ranks. And I'm going to have to go with the Blues Brothers. Jake and Elwood with John Belushi, Dan Aykroyd stepping front center, first in B costumes at the last minute for a lark that they would do in warm-ups. Because of Dan Aykroyd introducing John Belushi to his own blues obsession and getting Belushi on board with that. And the complete commitment that they had, which I'm just going to, in front of you two, throw to their improv background that, of course, they're going to commit to whatever the bit is.
Oh, yeah.
And that bit being the Blues Brothers and those characters being Jake and Elwood. But also what made it work and made it lasting was that there was a sincerity behind it. And it shows in how dedicated they were to making the music good. And there's been a lot of criticism over the years about Belushi's voice. I think Belushi's voice is great because it has a lot of character, and all that character comes through in the performance. And he's committed to those performances. And so I think that he is vocally unique, better than anything that I could ever do, but they were very smart about how they approached it in working with first Howard Shore and Paul Schaefer to put together an epic all-star band to make the greatest fusion of that sort of Southern and Chicago blues sound into just a legendary performance that they took the Universal Amphitheater first and then brought it back for what I'm picking as their iconic performance of Soul Man when they came back in full regalia the second time as the Blues Brothers to be the musical guest on the show and kick off the show with Soul Man. So
yeah, I mean, so the Blues Brothers are great. They played the Universal Amphitheater, and they're still in Universal Studios in Florida. Like, they're still a Blues Brothers show.
That the show spawned a best-selling musical act out of its cast members.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that album sold a lot, Briefcase Full of Blues.
Sure, I have it on vinyl at home.
The first SNL motion picture.
Yeah.
So what that thing created, and the fact that it was just a lark of what they would do mucking around at the blues bar downtown that Dan Aykroyd opened for them all to crash at after the Saturday show for the original version of the after party.
Yeah. Yeah, that blues bar was always one of those places that I wish I could have gone.
I'm sure it's a lovely boutique right now.
Yeah. Or if it's probably just a basement.
It's
at
a
this
baby.
point.
It's a baby Gap.
Oh my gosh. Do we ding that just because they weren't the musical guests, that they were cast members?
When they came back for that Soul Man performance, they were the musical guest on that.
But they were not cast members at that point.
They were still cast members.
They were still cast members.
Yes.
But the characters of Jake and Elwood were the musical guests.
Yes.
Yes. Much like Chris Gaines was the musical guest.
Hal, if you pick Chris Gaines, I swear to God.
He counts
well,
as
it's your
one.
turn. You're going to have to wait and see.
All right. It is my turn. I'm going to, because I had also Elvis Costello on my list.
Oh.
So I'm going to bring in one of my alts.
Okay.
And I'm going to go with, again, performance specific.
Mm-hmm.
This is not about anything else they did aside from this one performance. And this one performance was all they did because they were booted off the show mid-show because Rage Against the Machine was in fact raging against the machine.
Stephen Forbes?
When they were put on the same episode as a billionaire Republican candidate for president, you put Rage Against the Machine on the same episode as a billionaire Republican, they're gonna get mad.
Thank goodness the show never put a billionaire on again.
Ugh. They turned some flags upside down, put them on their amps. SNL said, no, you can't do that, took them off. So Rage Against the Machine's performance on that episode is just pure raging against the machine. It is a band's name and a band's task and a band's successful execution of said task. That Rage Against the Machine came on, raged against the machine, and knocked it out of the park. And then at the end, just stared defiantly at the audience as if to say, don't clap. We're not happy about this.
Well,
we are mad.
They didn't quite get away with it. In rehearsal, they had the flags on their amps, and then they were told they could not do it. So their plan was to unveil them right before they went live out of commercial break, and they mistimed it. So they revealed them just in time for everyone in the studio floor to freak out and tear them away from the amps right before they went live.
They had 15 seconds left of a cheer commercial to get that stuff off of there.
Just barely.
Yeah.
But they channeled all of that into their performance. Of all that
and that's
drama
the
that
thing.
happened.
It's like, for me, it's about seeing a moment of pure artistry. That's what I want out of an SNL musical guest and a musical guest performance is I want an artist. If SNL at its best is artists doing their thing. And sometimes the artist is a sketch performer doing comedy. Sometimes the artist is a Weekend Update anchor delivering jokes from behind a desk. And sometimes the artist is a musician at the top of their game. I think that was a group of musicians at the top of their game.
Yeah, that's a great choice.
Thank you.
I'm going to pick somebody who I think embodies meets all the requirements for all three of us. Someone who has hosted twice, I believe, has been a musical guest 5 times. What's that?
Garth Brooks.
Garth Brooks and Chris Gaines.
Mm-hmm.
But you never see one without the other. It's kind of weird. Also, not only that, but has a signature performance from her first time on the show in 2019 when she was performing Bad Guy in a room that was spinning slowly the whole time. So she's working her way from the floor to the ceiling to the wall to the floor. Mm-hmm. She's a great host as well. Billie Eilish.
Yeah.
And her brother Phineas, who's always there with her. Her last time on performing What Was I Made For from Barbie was, she's so talented. So talented. The two of them, like their ability to write and then perform these songs that are haunting, that are beautiful, that have something to say. And then just as like, there's also this element of her in particular that I love where it's like, it just feels like she's a kid in a candy store all the time. And so like just enjoying her life, doesn't care what anybody else thinks. And it's a great energy, but also obviously really reverential of being on SNL, like someone who understands what it means to be on that show and to be part of it.
And Phineas.
And Phineas. And I
love that she's got a certain, like looking at her next to somebody like Ariana Grande, who is a brilliant, professional, polished, perfect performer.
Yes.
Flawless. Billie Eilish, flawed as a human, which makes her flawless as an artist when performing music, but also a little bit raw and unpolished in the rest of the episode, in that reverence to it. Like you said, a kid in a candy store, a kid who recognizes like, hey, music is my thing, but I'm having a blast doing this. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's just this side is saying enthusiastic.
Yeah. Enthusiastic.
Doesn't take herself seriously.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, is serious about her work, but doesn't take herself seriously.
Yeah.
That's like any great artist in any discipline, I think, has some version of that.
She was fully committed.
Doing come on, that performance with the spinning room is spectacular.
It's so good.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great choice.
Yeah.
All right, do we have one
not
left?
Even Lionel Richie would come on in the 80s to attempt that live.
Yeah, not even.
Yeah.
Or Jamiroquai. I don't think he did his famous.
Or OK Go.
Jamiroquai
Get the
didn't go
treadmills,
upside
you
down.
cowards.
Jamiroquai just slid.
Yeah, exactly. Ken, what is your final pick?
I'm going with one that's purely personal, and I don't care if it goes any further than this, but I'm going to do it anyway. But I'm going to pick a friend who was the musical guest. And I'm going to pick, he was on the season 2 episode near the end of the season. And, he was collaborating with someone at that point who was the host of that episode. And they came on and they did a telethon for an ailing United Kingdom. And that host was Eric Idle. And that musical guest was Neil Innes. And Neil Innes was featured multiple times throughout the episode in sketches, but also did a live performance of a song Shangri-La, which is a beautiful song and backed really wonderfully by the SNL band. That song was later re-recorded and made into a Ruddles version of that for the Archaeology album in the 90s, which is also another beautiful version, which is made sort of like into their Hey Jude with a big, long, impressive rendition of it. He also performed because with Eric Idle, they did the Ruddles together. The Ruddles debuted when Eric Idle initially came on SNL and showed a Rutland Weekend Television short film of I Must Be in Love, which was, again, Neil Innes written, performing as Ron Nasty, the John Lennon stand-in within the Ruddles in that short. So we brought him out, did that, and he performed as Ron Nasty, the John Lennon stand-in, doing Cheese and Onions live during that episode as well. So I'm going Neil Innes.
Great. I love it.
With much respect to your friend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Much respect.
Rest in
Brilliant.
peace.
Rest in peace.
Neil Innes.
Yeah. I'm going to go with what I think is one more great performance. And that is, this was tough rounding out my 5, but I have to go with, I'm trying to find the date. November 15th, 2014. And that is Kendrick Lamar performing I. His energy in that performance is so dialed in. First of all, the band that he's got rocking behind him, it reminds me of when you see like a really good, the drummer specifically reminded me of when you see like a really good gospel group and the drummer is just completely relaxed, but their drum heads are so crisp and tight and every move that they do is, you know what I mean? There's that sort of sound where everybody is perfectly in sync in like a really good gospel track. And that's what the music to that behind him sounded like. So the band is already just absolute pros rocking it. And then Kendrick Lamar is just up there with this incredibly beautiful, energetic, uplifting performance. Like it took me a minute before I was like, is he okay? And then I realized he was wearing full scleral shell blackout contacts. Like, and I don't know why, just because he's Kendrick Lamar and he's delightfully weird.
Maybe
and
he had an eye
really
exam
fun.
earlier that day. You don't know.
Yeah.
No, I know. Because I had to look it up. I was like, is he wearing lenses? And yeah, he was wearing scleral shells. But you know what? You're right. Maybe it could have been. Maybe it was just his pupils were so dilated they took over the whites of his eyes.
When you get the eye appointment, you take the eye appointment because that can take forever to get the eye appointment.
Not if you're Kendrick Lamar.
Has trouble getting people in.
I think Kendrick Lamar's probably got a pretty expensive ophthalmologist who can get him in whenever he needs him.
He was in New York at the time, though. You never know.
But yeah, he's that performance is spectacular.
Yeah, he's great all time. I'm just the guy's 22 Grammys.
Come on, man. But that's the thing. You know what? That goes back to what I was saying before about Beyonce. Like, is Kendrick Lamar an incredible performance on SNL because he was meeting the moment?
Right.
Or is he an incredible performance on SNL because he's Kendrick Lamar and he's incredible? You know what I mean? Like,
and Drake can't even win a battle on your list.
Is that a great artist just doing what he does? You know?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not here to fight for anyone on this list. I'm here to offer up options and then talk about them.
I was going to say, I'm saying it because I'm trying to figure out my last spot. I have one alternate who didn't make it in when I chose between the two, and I wound up picking Elvis Costello. He was an alternate for me.
Has
I have
Mark's choice made your final difficult?
A little bit, because I feel like he's covered people who have been specifically musicians and not really in sketches, which is really good. I had Jack White on my list, who's been performing on the show since 2002 with the White Stripes, who most notably stepped in, I think, on 48 hours notice when Morgan Wallen was at a party kissing people at the height of the pandemic. And they couldn't have him on the show. So Jack Black comes in. Not only does he come in, but he finds like an obscure blues song about the 1918 Spanish flu pandemic to perform.
And
so
also fasts for a ridiculous amount of time.
Yes. And he fasted for like 24 hours, 36 hours or something like that prior to performing.
Just because
he's Jack Black and he's an interesting
Jack White.
He's Jack White, and he's an interesting guy.
I wanted to put Jack Black on my list.
Yeah.
If only because of that incredible King Kong performance that he did when he hosted. That song is incredible. That opening monologue, King Kong.
It was great.
Man, it just dawned on me that I've seen Jack White and Jack Black in the same show.
Yeah.
Yeah, at a concert in San Diego. It was the White Stripes, the Strokes, and Tenacious D.
That's amazing.
Anyway.
Oh, that's so good. Yeah, I had Jack White on the list, but once Ken had his thing of like someone who can be in sketches, someone who could host, but also has been an important part of the music, and I have to move in that direction and pick someone who started as a musical guest with a boy group, one of the most popular boy groups of the late 90s, early 2000s, who, like every single kid who was on Disney or Nickelodeon, who grew up to become a pop star and then appeared on the show, was like ready to perform. Like they've been performing sketch comedy in some way or another. Like they just know how to come in, be professional, and get stuff done. He's not only contributed musically as a guest, he's not only been a great host, but his work in digital shorts, not only as a performer, but also as someone who taught the Lonely Island how to actually produce music. And you get a little bit of that in the documentary that's available, which I think is called Ladies and Gentlemen, 50 Years of Music at SNL, something like that. But if you listen to the Seth Meyers Lonely Island podcast and they talk about Dick in a Box, they specifically go like, oh, Justin Timberlake taught us how to layer tracks. He taught us how to basically build and record and create music, which they then applied to Incredibad when they made their first album in the summer of 2008. So I have to put Justin Timberlake on the list.
Yeah.
Not only for his work as a host, but because he's a really incredible musician and his music has like time and again been an important moment in pop culture. And during those important moments, he's almost always on SNL, even when he's not hosting, and he drops in as one of Beyonce's dancers for Single Ladies.
That is so brilliant. That sketches. I didn't know he wasn't I guess Beyonce was the musical.
No, Beyonce was the guest and Paul Rudd was the host.
Dang. I didn't realize. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Bobby Moynihan was the focus.
And Bobby Moynihan, it was his idea. That was his idea.
Was it really?
Yeah.
So good. It's such a great
there you
bit.
go. Well, so we have 15 finalists. Now, Mark, did you say you have a way to go about this that you think makes sense?
I have a way to go about this that I think will be fun. I don't know. I haven't really worked out all the details in my head, but I will posit this. Ken, you started, then I went, then Hal went. So I want to come up with 3 finalists. And here's how I want to come up with our 3 finalists. Hal, I want you to pick one of Ken's. Ken, I want you to pick one of mine, and I'll pick one of Hal's. And those will be our 3 finalists going in.
Okay, off Ken's list, I have to pick Paul Simon. He's just too important to the show. Ariana Grande is fantastic. Like, everybody on this list is great for a myriad reasons, but Paul Simon is so woven into the tapestry of SNL and so important to it, from being the musical guest in the second show to being in the first ever Five Timers Club sketch because, of course, he hosted 5 times before 1980 and then came back and did it again, I think, in 86 or 87 around the time Graceland came out, which is one of my favorite albums of all time. So I'm going to go with Paul Simon off of Ken's list.
All right. Ken?
Off of Mark's list, I think the one that to me best represents the cognitive dissonance of Saturday Night Live as an institution combined with it being live and the danger inherent in that would be Rage Against the Machine.
Okay, Rage Against the Machine.
All right.
Excellent.
And then I'm picking from Hal's list. I've got to go with, I'm going back to what I originally said about Saturday Night Live meeting the moment, specifically the musical guest meeting the moment. We've got 2 great examples of it on here, but I think it was a more important moment than just, I don't want to do that song. And even without Phife Dawg, I got to give it to A Tribe Called Quest.
All right.
And that is specific to that performance. Like you said, they knew what they were going in for. They were ready for it. They could have done it a decade prior, but they were there when they were there in a moment of national tragedy to bring the people together. Plus, they just are awesome. So I got to go with Tribe Called Quest.
Yeah, listen to the Low End Theory if you've ever listened to Low End Theory. It's so good. Like, all their stuff is good. There's a reason why Q-Tip was on every single like rap album.
Yeah.
Made in the early to mid 90s. All right, so our 3 finalists are Paul Simon, Rage Against the Machine, and A Tribe Called Quest. I know what I would pick out of these 3. Ken, do you know what you would pick out of these 3?
I do, but I'm not comfortable with it.
All right. And Mark, do you know what you would pick out of these 3?
Yeah, I think I do.
All right, should we do a 1, 2, 3?
Sure.
All right. 1, 2, 3. Paul Simon. There you go. People of the world.
Why are you not happy? Hold on. Why are you not happy with it?
Yeah.
Ken?
Wait. Why?
I mean, you talk about the institutional nature of SNL. I mean, there's no one who's become more institutional nature of that than Paul Simon.
Yeah.
Octogenarian Paul Simon at this point.
Well, look, SNL's an institution.
But
so.
You had to start somewhere, and I think it set a precedent for what the show became and the flexibility it could have and the weird moments it could introduce in melding and introducing all those elements. So.
Yeah, 100%. People of the world. Ken said it best. Paul Simon goes back to the very first episode. He's still part of the show. I would be shocked if he's not part of the concert Friday night before the actual 50th anniversary special, which is on Sunday the 16th. So I would expect to see him there because he's that important to the show. And he's one of those guys that like was always willing to do stupid stuff, like come in and host as well. And that I think opened the door for the music and comedy to be a little bit more intertwined. I mean, he kind of opened that door up before anybody else. You didn't see Billy Preston or Janice Ian in sketches. You know, by and large, everything came out of the cast. And then he probably, because of his friendship with Lauren, was like, I'll do some silly stuff. Yeah, put me in a turkey suit and I'll do Still Crazy After All These Years.
Wait, you don't remember Leon Redbone on his date with Connie Conehead? What's that on top of your head? No.
Hey, listen, at the big concert I hear Paul's going to perform a Chris Gaines song.
Oh my gosh. Will you knock it off with the Chris Gaines? Hal, just say people of the world.
People of the world, Paul Simon is the best SNL musical guest of all time, asked and answered. Ken Plume, you're going to get thanked again, but thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
Tell everybody all the stuff you're always doing. You have a lot of pots and pans on the stove. You're cooking several things at once. Always got a lot going on. Tell everybody about it and where they can support you individually outside of the show.
The easiest place would be just go to patreon.com/Ken Plume, and there's a lot of archive interviews that I'm putting up and new interviews and new Bit of a Chat episodes and a lot of exclusive stuff on there and moonlighting on the side with a friend's podcast that just launched that I would love for people to check out called NDAF, which is a conversation with artists about autism in art and having discussions about that. It just launched recently, and people can go check that out at bit.ly/NDAF. There's
Amazing.
a couple episodes up there, and they're really fascinating, wonderful conversations. So, yeah, and We Got This is still a thing.
It's still a thing.
Still a thing.
How dare you put it that way?
Yeah.
Listen, I never. Who knew that SNL would last 50 years? Who knew that this would last 10
we could have been
years?
doing this on SNL's 40th.
Yeah.
Almost. Man, that's wild. Well, thank you for being here, Ken. It's nice to see your face.
10.
It's nice to get it's nice to get to have you on the show. Long time coming, and it's delightful to have you on. This topic is closed, but there are many. This topic is closed. Ken, can you do me a favor and edit that?
Nope, keeping it in.
This cockpit
is closed.
This cockpit is closed. Do not try to rush the door of this particular flight.
Yeah.
This topic is closed, but there are many more topics to discuss. So please reach out to us via email at wegotThisPodcast@gmail.com or
join our Discord where it's all happening now, or you can follow us on Blue Sky at We Got This Podcast. That is bit.ly/WGT Discord to join the Discord. Did I have that right, Ken?
Yes. Yes.
Great.
Sure.
That
if
voice
it's not,
you heard,
I'll fix it.
Yeah, well, you heard one more time. That is producer Ken Plume. You can support him and all the things he told you about and more at patreon.com/Ken Plume. Thank you to researcher Kate McManus, graphic designer Uri Kilman, and QA engineer Jen Alba.
And thanks, of course, to our musicians. We have our musicians too, SNL. Jonathan Dinerstein and Mike Furman for our score and theme song, respectively. And thanks to you, the people of the world, for once again giving us an opportunity to talk about things that we love. We would love to attend a taping of SNL with you and rock out in the front row to any of these performances and then dance the night away with you at the Blues Bar, which is apparently now a Baby Gap. But that's not what's important. What's important is
it could be a Sephora
that we wouldn't, or a Sephora, that we wouldn't do this show without you. We couldn't do this show without you. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you. For Hal Lublin, I'm Mark Gagliardi.
For Mark Gagliardi, I'm Hal Lublin. And don't worry, everybody. We got this.
We got this.
Okay, let's do one more time, but good.
Maximum Fun.
A worker-owned network
of artist-owned shows.
supported
directly by you.